But like your transition is something that I've been noticing for a lot of veterans later in the career, where they found education being pretty much recession proof. I don't know how accurate that is, but also like as like a secondary passion, and in some cases like yours become a primary passion. And when it comes to entrepreneurship, which is, I feel like, one of the main topics I want to talk to you about in this episode, like how did you figure that shit out? I mean, it's something that I think in our traditional art school, we don't even have an elective that covers how to do business or walk down that path. I mean, can you talk about the early days of testing these grounds? You're talking about learning through your failings and being able to kind of truck through that. Any insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is it's not been figured out, so I'm still failing, still succeeding. And I think you're right. It is something that it's hitting a lot of people in our industry now, is that they're heading off into education. And in many ways, it seems like that's the recession-proof approach. But once you get into business, you realize, business is business. It's been around forever. There's a whole physics to the way in which businesses operate. And that becomes its own thing. And it is not the same thing as being an artist. So you can quickly find yourself at odds with why you're doing it. And that's something that has to be kind of addressed. I got into business unintentionally. I'm an accidental entrepreneur by all means. And it was just, the company I worked for, the last company I worked for, where I worked for somebody who made me decide I would never work for anybody else again, was just a horrible experience. It was just a bad boss. And, he was going through his own crap. So, I'm sure what he was struggling with was real stuff in the middle of the depression. So all good there, but it was still a bad experience for me. And I, as a creative, realized how little control I had over my life and decided I was going to get control. I went off, I started freelancing, and I realized I was just, I was basically working the same hours plus more hours, drumming up work. And then my wife told me that she was pregnant and that we were having a kid. And I was like, I got to level my game up. How do I do that? And this was in the beginning of internet marketing and all this stuff. And, Jeff Walker had this class called Product Launch Formula. And that class kind of opened me up to being, we didn't have this word back then, but an influencer who's launching classes and builds a business around that. And I had no idea what any of that meant. I just knew that I had some standing in the community and I had the capacity to teach. I loved it. And maybe somebody might actually take a class or two. And we started with my own classes. We're just going to offer this out, and nobody else was doing it. So it just grew gangbusters. We trained thousands of people. We brought people into it. We had partners, all this kind of stuff. And then more people started to flood into it. And then people were able to do this on their own through Gumroad. And so, right around that time, that's when it became more real. It became more of a business because competition was there. And there was more options for people to do stuff. So we had to convince people to go with us or do things on their own. And, we had to figure this stuff out. And those were very difficult years. And they were mixed right with just a couple of years before, I was really unhappy with my own artwork. And so, I had a team releasing classes and doing stuff, but I personally wasn't satisfied. And I was struggling to figure out like, what's my art, what's important to me, and what makes a difference. And that struggle, man, I mean, like there was the business struggle. And in the beginning, it was not a real struggle because we were in what they would call a blue ocean. So it was just, it was a free for all. And as long as you were adding value, it was great. When it got to a red ocean, we started to struggle. And that's where we're at today a little bit, is we're in a bit of a red ocean in terms of training, and people are undercutting pricing, and everybody's trying to go cheap and they're doing normal business tactics. Right. And so, what I had to decide myself, and this is like, if we bring this back to how'd you figure it out? I'd say I haven't figured it out, but what I have figured out is you just got to find what you want to do, right? Like what's the mission? What can you lead people in? And that's where I took 2 years, and I took Game Art Institute. I was working with a partner, and we severed the relationship. I had a bunch of other teachers. I severed those relationships, and I focused on just what I wanted to do, which was basically get somebody a job. Mm-hmm. I wanted to find a path where it's like, you can take that guy. Let me grab some water. I had a class right before this, so I was talking nonstop. I wanted to find that guy that was like working at Starbucks, or the job I had, which was, a night restocker at Costco. And I mean, I've worked on an assembly line. I've worked in construction. I've worked in bookstores. I've worked as a pizza delivery guy. I've done all those jobs, and I wanted to find that guy and give him a path to a job, so that, he goes from 20, 30,000, whatever this current job is, to 60,000, but not just that, but he's doing something that he loves that would have not been possible before. And that, in all honesty, I mean, traditional education is ill-equipped to prepare somebody for, I wanted to make that difference in the world. And we did. We built the boot camp. The boot camp is the primary vehicle for that. And that's the thing that I feel I can lead people. And that's the mission of my life. That's where I could stand up. I can be in here with this, in this meeting with you, because I'm very introverted. Even though I'm on camera, and, I work on a persona and I project. If I don't have to do that kind of stuff, I don't. I like to just kind of be behind the scenes. But that mission of getting that person that job, that was the siren's call that led me to kind of get through all the other crap, I have to get through, which includes cash flow. That's something you got to think about in a business, is how much money do you have come in, and how much I love to spend money. I'm an artist. It's like, I want this guy's tutorial. I want this thing. Let me buy it. Let me get it. Let me work with this person. Right. But I got to think, do we have the students? Is the cash flow coming in? And so there's these real business concerns. And the only way that I will invest myself, because I have to make tiny sacrifices, the only way I would invest myself is if it's a big enough, call to my mission in life, which that is, because I now know what that is. I know I have one focus: getting somebody a job that would not have gotten a job before.